Hey Discover Church family, how are you? I wanted to take a moment to give a special shout out to all of our first time viewers. I also wanted to share some tips to help increase your viewing experience. We've got chat hosts online waiting to greet you. So when you tune in today, make sure that you say hi and let us know where you're viewing from. Secondly, there's a way for you to engage by communicating in our chat experiences during the message and during the worship. If I say something that resonates with you and you like, I would encourage you to hit the like button or hit the heart button, or if you feel comfortable with it, even share it on your pages. Lastly, as we begin to introduce Discover Worship, you can sing along with us because the lyrics will be pinned to the comment section of the pages, or if you look on our website, it'll be in the notes section. So move to the edge of your seat, lean in, turn the volume up a little bit or a lot of it, and let's get into this Sunday morning worship experience. I look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you.
To ascend your glorious hill, Lord, without relent, I will draw near to come closer, closer in your presence to dwell. Here I am, Lord. Here I am, Lord. One moment in your presence changes everything. Here I am abandoned. You are all I seek. Have your way in me. Have your way. Humbled and in awe by your wonder and grace, your glory settles in and breaks every chain. For now there is freedom, and I will never be the same. No, 'cause one moment in your presence changes everything. Oh, here I am abandoned. You are all I see. Have your way in me. Have your way, oh Jesus. See, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, there is healing. For I know where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is power, revelation. For I know where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom and there is healing. For I know where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is power, revelation. Your presence changes everything. Here I am abandoned. You are all I seek. Have your way in me.
Hey, Discover Church family, thank you so much for tuning in once again to the Discover Church at Home broadcast. My name is Mark Poland, and I have the privilege and honor to serve Discover Church as the lead pastor, and just excited to have you all watching the broadcast together. We're in week 3 of this teaching series that we're calling Pandemic, and this series really is all about how you and I have to navigate through the sudden change in our lives over the last 9 weeks due to the coronavirus. Again, it's been 9 weeks, so I know some of us are tired. We've got anxiety is running high. We're anxious, we're angry, we're frustrated, and for some of us, we probably have a little bit of concern. If you've been watching the news, the news says one thing one day, and then the next day they turn around and they say something else. And so if you're absorbing all of this information that you're receiving, then I know that you can't help but wonder and think about the uncertainty of tomorrow. And so my hope in communicating this message to you today is, first and foremost, is that I want you to understand is that we're in this together. And we're going to get through this together as a church, as a people, and as a family. And so here's what I want to do. In the meantime, I know you're thinking, well, what do I do? What's next? What should I be thinking about? And I just want to remind you that when life becomes unstable and our tomorrow seems uncertain, that God is speaking to us. And when he speaks to us, he brings clarity to those things that are uncertain. So he wants to bring clarity to our hearts, and he wants to bring clarity to our minds. And as I've said in the past, that while this may have caught us by surprise, it has not caught God by surprise. So in the same way that God has spoken in the past, God is still speaking to us right here in our present. And so what I don't want you to do is that I don't want you to let frustration take your eyes off the promise. I don't want your frustration to cause you to blame other people or point fingers. You know, there's a saying that if you point your finger at someone else, then you have 3 fingers pointing right back at you. And I've heard conversations where people are blaming the White House, but according to the foundational scripture of this series, I would say to you that God is saying that the problem is not in the White House, the problem is in my house. I believe God would say to us what he said to his people so many years ago in 2 Chronicles 7:14. He says, then if my people, he says, if my people, which is an indication that maybe his people weren't doing what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. The problem's not with anybody else. The problem is with us. If my people, if we can come together, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. And remember what we've talked about over the last couple of weeks is that this part of the verse is the conditions that you and I have to adhere to in order for us to experience this last statement in this verse. And he says, if we do all of these things, if we adhere to these conditions, he says, I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sins and I will heal or restore their land. That promise is for you and that promise is for me. It's a guarantee that God is going to come through regardless of what it looks like. It may not happen the way that you desire it for it to happen, but I promise you that God is always going to come through. And so today, as we continue to move forward in this series, I hope that this message brings you the hope that you need to know that we're going to get through it. And so today I want to talk about the third condition of this promise that God makes to us. And if we look at it, 2 Chronicles chapter 7 and 14 one more time, you'll see that it says, then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. In other words, we have to acknowledge that we're nothing without him. We have to have a proper assessment of ourselves. So if we humble ourselves, the humility opens the door for us so that we can pray. And we know that prayer is the vehicle God uses to draw us closer to him. So he says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. And then he says, seek my face. Now, I don't want you to just speed through it and just read through it, because this has some significant implications for us today. And it was an aha moment for me as I was studying this over the last couple of weeks. In fact, I think God revealed something in myself and that I hope that you'll be able to identify in yourself. And it's really, really significant, and I want you to hang in there with me, and we'll discuss it in just a few moments. I think God is trying to really get something to us, especially right now. And so let's take a look at it, because this seek my face is not just a statement. It needs to be broken down into two components. And the first part is to seek. And I understand you're smart. You don't need me to define what seek means. But I just want you to hear these words, because maybe they'll have a different meaning for you as you move forward in your day-to-day lives. But seek means to go after. When you think about your relationship with God, do you think about going after him? It means to chase down. The image that I get is if somebody's running and you have to chase them down and grab them, or if somebody was, back in the day when I had to take the bus to go to school and that bus was coming, I had to run and chase it down. When you think about chase down, what do you think about chasing down? I think about when LeBron ran down the court and chased down, and we called it a chase down block, when he blocked Andre Iguodala's basket, and they ended up winning the championship. What do you think about when you think about chase down? So it says to go after. I like to say get after it. It means to chase down. It means to search for. It means to ask. It means to consult. So he wants you to seek after him. God's desire is that all of his people would seek after him and find him. But here's the thing. Those who seek God, those are the ones that God rewards. But for those who fail to seek God, they ended up doing it at their own demise. Seek God. Look, if you want to seek God, it means that you and I have to make God a priority in our lives. And in Matthew chapter 6:33, it's a famous passage of scripture, and we all know it. It says, seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. In other words, we need to aim for, we need to strive after. Again, we need to set God as a priority in our lives. It means that we have to make a commitment to find and do the will of God for our lives. And don't let it get crowded by your need for material concerns. Don't let it get overcrowded by the other things that you have going on in your life. Set God as a priority. You need to understand is that we are in this constant, never-ending search because God has put something in our heart. Oh man. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 11 tells us exactly what it is. He says he has also planted eternity, a sense of divine purpose in the human heart, a mysterious longing which nothing under the sun can satisfy except God. That's the Amplified version. It says it so clearly, and it reminds me of a statement that St. Augustine made. And he says this, he says, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until we can find peace in you, or till we find your presence. People are longing for and desiring to know the significance of themselves. And so we search. And I have a question for you. So you know that you're searching. What are you searching for? If we follow what Ecclesiastes says, what we're really searching for is what God put in our heart. You know what God put in our heart? It's that second part. Seek my face. In other words, the face of God. What we're searching for really is the presence of God, because the presence of God is where God shows us his favor towards his people. It's God's turning his face toward his people so that he can offer them help in their times of need. It's where we, in his presence, where you and I can know God for who he truly is. In fact, in Exodus chapter 33, verse 14, is you get a sense of his presence when Moses is leading the Israelites from out of Egypt, and Moses begins to inquire about God because the danger was impending for the children of Israel. And look at this communication that Moses has with God. And I'm gonna start at verse 13. He says, "Now therefore," he says, "if I found favor in your sight," if I'm in your presence, if I can find favor in your sight, he says, "please show me now your ways, that I may know you." So what happens when we get in God's presence? In order to find favor in your sight, he says, "Consider too that this nation is your people." Like, these are your people. And look at God's response. And he said, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." In other words, many of us are looking. Many of us are saying, "God, do something. God, do something. Do you see what's happening all around us? Do you see what's going on? Do you see that we're in the middle of a pandemic? Do something, do something." And you know what God is saying? God is saying, "Seek my presence, seek my presence." In other words, God is saying, "You do something. Come get into my presence so that I can give you rest, so that I can ease your frustration, so that I can give you the answer that you need in order for you to navigate through the difficulty that we're experiencing today." He wants to give you rest from the battles that you're facing right now. We're all in this together. We're all facing the battle. And God's saying, if you come into my presence, I can give you rest. In fact, Psalm 16:11 says that you make known to me the path of life. How do you do that? When you spend time with him, when you get into his presence, he says, "You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand." And today I want you to have joy. I want you to have real joy. And you can't have joy unless you're in God's presence. But here's the thing. The primary reason why we don't have joy right now is because we've placed our joy in the wrong things. The primary reason why we don't have joy right now, in this season, in this moment, in the middle of this pandemic, is because we placed our joy in the wrong things. And this pandemic has threatened all of our safe places. Our safe places are the little kingdoms, the little mountains, the little things that we built because we're trying to recreate what only the presence of God can bring to us. You and I have spent years building up our little castles, building our little pyramids, building up all of our little things that make us feel safe, that make us feel secure, make us feel all of the things that we need. But the reality is that they are fake imitations. They are imitations of what we essentially get by being in the presence of God. You know, the scripture talks about all aspects of people searching and people seeking, and what I want to focus on is the two things that I think of is that our need to search for satisfaction and God's need to search for humanity. It reminds me of the painting that you often see where you see the picture of God and his finger and human beings, you know, a man's picture, his finger and they're touching, or they're getting close to touching. It's really, I interpret it as man's, searching for eternity, searching for God's presence, and God searching for man. there's a connection. But because we put our joy and our hope and our search into the wrong things, what happens is that we actually miss. We miss. And we don't connect to God the way that we should. And I'm going to tell you that everything that we search for, I think, could be wrapped up in these 4 categories. And if you want to take notes and write these down, just, raise your hand or put it in the chat. And, if you agree with them, if it connects with you, the thing that you put your hope and your trust in, and when you're searching, it's the search for comfort. We all want to be in a place of comfort. So we put our trust in our surroundings and our comfort. We put our trust in our successes. Our successes will help us with our esteem, and it'll give us a sense that we've made it. We search for security. We all want this place of security, and we think about security and how that relates to our well-being. And then the search for love or relationships, if you want to put that there, we search for those. These are the things that we search for, and these are the things that actually create safe spaces for every single one of us. In each of these areas, it makes our lives safe. We are concerned about our safe places. And no matter where you go, how loved you are, or what you have in this life, none of those things can compensate for the emptiness that we all feel when we are not in the presence of God. And as long as we continue to plan, and as long as we continue to scheme, and as long as we continue to try to figure this out on how we can put our trust in those areas, you know what? The enemy is going to continue to laugh at us. Because he's going to say, listen, they can do whatever they want. Apart from God, they've got no power. But the moment that you start seeking God's presence, then the enemy, he stops laughing, because he knows that you are about to be up to something significant. And so for each of us in our lives, listen, this is a constant battle. Every day is something that we have to battle. This idea of, am I going to be in God's presence? Am I going to search for God's presence? That mechanism is already in us. This idea to search for more, that knowing that there is more, like God had put that in there in our lives. And the reality is that you've got to make a decision every day. And it is a battle every day of whether I'm going to search for God or I'm going to search without God. There's no in between. And some of you are stuck right now because you've got 1 foot in, you've got 1 foot out. Well, if you've got 1 foot out, you might as well be all the way out. And so we've got to fight this battle. And for most of us, again, it's a constant battle. And for most of us, again, we put too much of our trust in the things that give us a false sense of importance, that give us a false sense of hope and reality. And it's this never ending battle that we've got to get on the right side of. You and I have to get on the right side of it. And the only way that we can do that is if we seek God. And let me just tell you that you're not alone. I'm not alone in doing this. In fact, God has given us a blueprint on how to navigate and how to seek him and get our lives out of the trappings of those things, those 4 things: the comfort, the success, the security, and the love and the relationships. And he showed it to us in the person of David, King David, because King David, he had some battles. In fact, in all of his kingship, in his reign, David had battles. In fact, I think he had battles his whole entire life. And if you look at Psalm chapter 27, verses 1 through 5, and I'm going to stop at verse 4, but it says here, it says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Look at this. Verse 2, he says, when the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. Verse 4, One thing I've asked from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. David, just like you, he experienced a tremendous amount of stress. But he tells us in verse 3 that he has arrived at the point where the constant threat of danger, the constant battling, the constant fighting, the constant struggle, he's saying that I no longer, or it no longer gets me down. It no longer destroys my confidence. It no longer makes me fearful. And he says, I face it now with a level of joy because I'm not fearful anymore. In fact, verse 3, it says, though an army besiege me and make war against me, I will not fear. Now, the fact is that, again, most of us feel like this life, and particularly in this situation, we feel like this is a battle. Most of us feel like this is a continual fight. It's an ongoing struggle. The fact that David's battle is worse than anything that we could ever experience, this makes this psalm so much more practical for you and I. But if David in his situation has found a way to face the worst kind of fear, the worst kind of battle, the worst kind of conflict, then whatever David discovered has to work for you and for me. It has to work for us. I believe that God is really, in this season, he's given us a blueprint. Second Chronicles is a blueprint of how to navigate from the struggle and the battles that we face every day. Psalm chapter 27, this whole entire chapter is a blueprint, is a strategy for how we can navigate through the difficulties that we may be experiencing right now. And I'm sitting here and I'm rubbing my hands because I love the strategy behind this. And you need to understand is that David was in a battlefield. It reminds me of an old song. I'm on the battlefield fighting for the Lord. Let's get into this. Seriously, David, he's on the battlefield fighting for the Lord, giving us a strategy of how we can fight our battlefield. So here's the thing. The battlefield is a place that you can never let your guard down. And if you're in a place in a season where you can't let your guard down, guess what? That's a battlefield. You always have to be on. You always have to be on guard. The battlefield is the opposite of a home. Remember, David says that I want to dwell in the house of the Lord. So the battlefield is very opposite from a home. A home is a place where you can find safety. A battlefield is a place of danger. The battlefield is a place where you're always being tested. A home is a place where you're completely being accepted. A home is a place where you can just let your guard down and you can just relax. But a battlefield is a place where you have to keep your shield up. You've got to always be alert. In fact, when you're a child, a home it should be a place where you will always feel safe, like a place that you always want to run to and come to. But here's the and then when you grow up and when you become an adult, guess what? You leave the home and you find another home. When you grow up, you find a relationship or you want to get married. When you get married, when you get married, you know what? You're trying to find a safe space. You're trying to find a safe place. You can finally get to the place where you can be completely accepted. You can be yourself and you don't have to judge it because that person loves me and I love that person. We build homes. We strive for professional successes. Those are all of the trappings of being safe. We're going to try to find places wherever we are where it's safe. I moved because I wanted to be safe. But we're trying to find these safe spaces or these places or spots where the battles are no more. But I want you to realize that once you are able to get to the point where life, unfortunately, is a constant battle, then you'll eventually discover that even the so-called safe places are not all that safe. Sometimes relationships become difficult. Sometimes the home that you thought it was safe, something breaks. Sometimes the relationships, whether it's a marriage or a friendship, that breaks. Sometimes you get disappointed, that breaks. The things that we think are calling us or that we're creating for us to be safe, they're just not safe anymore. But I want you to look at what David says in verse 4. He says, one thing I ask, of the Lord. This only do I seek, that I may dwell in your house all the days of my life, or forever. What does it mean? It means that God's presence is what he has been looking for. God's presence is what we're actually looking for. I'm just putting it into words. Not my comfort, not my successes, not my security, not my relationships. No, none of those things are what I thought I was looking for those things, but I was really looking for God's presence. God's face is the face that I've been looking for in every encounter and in every relationship. I was trying to recreate the experience that I had when I was in the presence of God. This is what life is all about. I found it, is what you should be saying. If I have this, I really have the only home that I need. If I have this, I have the only safety that I need. If I have the presence of God. And so what I want to do, in the few moments that I have left, I want to show you what the consequences or the results are for being in the presence of God, or for seeking my face, seeking the face of God. Are you ready for that? I'm so excited. You should be chatting in there right now. I hope this is good for you. So the first thing, if you want to write this down, the first result of seeking the presence of God is that it leads to life. Seeking God leads to life. In John 10:10, it says the thief comes not only to steal, kill, and destroy. He just wants you to keep you. And if he can keep you busy and preoccupied from being in the presence of God, go for it, have at it. If he can't push you, he'll pull you. If he can't pull you, he'll push you. But as long as you're not focusing on the presence of God, he will keep letting you do what you're doing. But he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But it says, I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. He's life. What do you mean by life? He's talking about both the physical life and the spiritual life. God realized, or you need to realize, is that life itself originates from God. It's the physical life is the time between the day that you're born and the day that you die. It's your natural life. It's your chronological life. We get, 70, 80, 90 years. I hope, I get 120 years. I hope you get 120 years. That's what the Bible promises. I'm trying to get all 20. So, but it's the 250 hours of sleep that you'll have throughout the course of your life. It's the 200,000 trips to the bathroom that you'll make in your lifetime. For me, I probably I'll be closer to the 300 number, but that's neither here nor there. But the point that I'm making is that God is saying that if you can get into my presence, then I want to give you life, and I want to give you life to the fullest. But he's not just talking about your physical life. He's talking about the condition of your life, the state of being alive and healthy and exuberant and energetic and having a life with vitality. I want to tell you that it's not just the quantity, it's not just the years in your life, but it's the life that's in those years. He's talking about the quantity, and he's talking about the quality of your life. Listen, it's life that leads to life. His presence leads to life. I need you to understand that. Being in God's presence leads to a vitality that you can't get anywhere else. Okay, number 2, I hope you're with me. Being in the presence of God leads to forgiveness. Isaiah chapter 55, verse 6 and 7, it says, seek the Lord while you can find him. Look at this. Seek him while you can find him. Call on him now while he is near. It says, let the wicked change their ways. We're going to talk about that next week, and banish the very thought of doing wrong. Let them turn to the Lord, that he may have mercy on them. Yes, turn to God, turn to our God, for he will forgive generously. Let me just say this. If you're far away from God right now, and you feel like you can't come back to him, like I've had conversations with people recently, and they feel like because they made a mistake or they messed up, or maybe they were intentional about the decision that they made, they feel like you can't come back to God. They feel like, there's some level of disappointment, so they can't come back to God to get forgiveness. Well, that's not the God that I serve. In fact, God will do whatever must be done so that you can come back. And regardless of how great or how big or how significant the sin is, the mistake that you made, God will do whatever it takes to deal with that sin. But he wants you to come back. And guess what? Let me tell you, as a parent, sometimes when my kids do something stupid or do something wrong, I should say, I want to ask them what the reason is for why they did what they did. But guess what? God doesn't ask us for a reason. He says, come on back, forgiveness without reference to a reason. I don't need a reason. He's saying, just come back. Get into the presence of God. Seek God right now, right where you are, regardless of what you've done, regardless of what you're thinking. If you're tuning into this broadcast right now, this message is for you. You need to go to get into God's presence so that you can experience forgiveness. The third thing that his presence gives us, it leads to blessings. Psalm 119:2 says, blessed are those who seek his statutes and seek him with all their heart. Blessed, you've heard the term, highly favored. It's grace. It's God's empowerment. He wants you in his presence so that he can empower you so that you can do the thing that he's called you to do. But that level of obedience comes from the heart level, not just the scene level. And what do I mean by that? You can't be in the place where you're just checking a box. You can't be in the place where you're just saying, I'm doing this, or, it's got to be at the heart level. Because one thing that I found in my years and being in ministry leadership is that it is possible to do the right thing and have the wrong heart. You're just doing it because somebody asked you to do it. You're just doing it because it's an obligation. It has to be at a heart level. If you read the story of Jonah, you'll see that when he went to Nineveh, he did the right thing because that's what God told him to do, but his heart was never in it. Don't be that person, because God can't bless you if you're not obedient to him at the heart level. You gotta get down to the heart level. Don't just check a box and say, hey, I did it. Hey, here I am. Be in it with your whole heart. And the next one is that, I think there's 4. Being in the presence of God leads to provision. Psalm 34:8-10 says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him. It says, fear the Lord, you his godly people, for those who fear him will have all they need. Even strong lions sometimes go hungry, but those who trust in the Lord will lack no good thing. Do you know that the writer of Psalm, do you notice that he uses a culinary metaphor? He's trying to urge his listeners or his readers to be in a relationship with God. And it reminds me of, if somebody was, if you were cooking and you're cooking something and maybe it's something new and you get a spoon and you go to your whoever is there, I don't know, I think about my wife or I think about my daughter when she's cooking. they're like, hey, taste this, taste this. And sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want to taste it. I don't want to taste anything. No, they're like, no, really good. Taste it, taste it, taste it. That's the metaphor that the person who wrote Psalm, that's the metaphor that he's using he's trying to encourage the reluctant taster, the reluctant eater. He's saying, try this thing out. In other words, he's trying to encourage the person to listen. I want you to try God. I want you to try and sample God regarding his provisions. I want you to have confidence that he is going to do what he said he's going to do, and you will be a recipient of his benefits. And I want you to just trust God. And so what I'm trying to tell you right now is that don't trust in all of the things that we've used to kind of build up to create these safe places in us. I'm trying to tell you is to put your total trust and your dependence in God. And what I'm saying right now is that you need to put your trust in his provision, especially right now. Put your trust. Seek after, go after, aim after, strive after, search for God's presence because provision is there. And then lastly, it leads to God's protection. Psalm 27:5. For in the day of trouble, and we're experiencing some trouble right now, he will keep me safe in his dwelling, his home, where his presence is. He will hide me in the shelter of the sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. God will keep you safe. He's going to keep me safe. He's going to keep you safe. He's going to keep your family safe. He's going to keep our family safe when trouble comes. This shelter or this tent, and another version says the temple, he says, it is the shelter to keep us free from the chaos that we experience in this world. Like we can hide in the presence of God. We can hide in his shelter. We can hide in his safe place. God's protection is literally like being transported. When he says high upon a rock, he's talking about a mountain. God wants to lift us on top of the mountain above all of the fray, and all of the anxiety and all of the troubles and all of the challenges. If you can get into God's presence, if you can search and make God your highest and first priority, frustration, anger, resentment, anxiety, whatever other feelings that you may be having right now, God will take those away. He will shield you away from all of those things. So I'm just asking you to try it. Taste and see that he's good. Take a step towards God. And if you seek him, I want you to remember, this is the big idea. If you seek God, he will be found, and he is a rewarder for those who diligently seek him. I hope this message blessed you today. I'm fired up and focused on seeking God, searching after him, making him my highest priority. I'm looking for God as if I lost something. And I encourage you to do the same. And with everything changing around us day by day, I promise you that God not only will protect you, but he'll help you change your perspective on what you're experiencing right now. And some of you may be watching right now and you're thinking, well, I do need to get into God's presence. I need to make that connection with God. And maybe some of you are watching right now and maybe you've made that connection before when we had church, when you were in church, and maybe you had an opportunity and you've made a prayer and you've connected with God and you said, I want God in my heart, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out for you. It didn't work out the way that you planned. It didn't work out the way that someone said it would. but now you're really recognizing your need for God. If you're here today, I just want to invite you to pray with me. Don't move, don't leave. Just right here, right now. If you just pray this prayer right after me, I would love to welcome you to the family of God. So bow your head, close your eyes, repeat after me. Dear Jesus, I believe you are the Son of the living God, and that you died for all of my sins. And I ask you now to come into my life, to come into my heart, to save me, to set me free, to grant me access to get into your presence. Today, I confess with my mouth what I believe in my heart, that you are the Son of the living God. Today, I declare this day is the first day of the rest of my life. That's it. I get so excited about this part because I love the fact that people are making decisions to make a connection with God. I'm not asking you to join our church. I'm asking you to join God's family, because that is the first step that you will need to take in order for you to get into God's presence. I'm so excited. And what I want you to do is I want you to take your next step. And here's your next step. If you're watching us on our website, then there's a connection card at the top right, or there's a button right there that you can click right now. It said, you know what? I'm raising my hand to give my life to Christ. And I want you to do that. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, there's a link right now in the chat. I want you to click that link, and I want you to fill out that connection card. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to bother you. What we're going to do is just, I would like to email you and just congratulate you on your decision. It'll take you less than 30 seconds. Like, we really want to know. It's important for us to know that you've given your life to Christ. So I thank you for tuning in to part 3 of Pandemic Clarity in the Midst of Uncertainty. I want you to have a great day and have a wonderful week. And I can't wait to look forward to seeing you next week. So stay tuned. We've got a few announcements for you, and then this broadcast will end. God bless you and have a great day.
Hey, Discover Church, we are so thankful that you were able to join us for our worship experience this morning. We pray that today's message blessed you and that you are ready to take your next steps in seeking God's face and His will for your life. Before we end our broadcast this morning, we have a few important reminders that we love to share with you. If you haven't done so already, visit the Apple App Store or the Android Marketplace to download the Discover Church app today. And we want to celebrate for a moment for the opportunity that we've had to join in community with so many of you through our small group nights. This week concludes our small group night semester. So if you haven't had an opportunity to join us, sign up today. And Discover Church, we are so encouraged by your overwhelming generosity. Your consistent giving allows us to share Jesus with so many others. If you plan to continue worshiping God today with your giving, we want to remind you that there are several safe and secure ways for you to do so. You can visit the Discover Church website, or you can give today using the Discover Church app. Discover Church, we miss you. We can't wait to worship again with you in person. We love you, and we want to remind you that we're here if you need us. God bless you all. Take care and stay well. Bye.